you hit me, man?
Get on my face. Hacking all day. I'm tired of that, man. Get on my face. Get on my face. I got something for you. I got something for you. Got some back.
Yo, man.
What's up, man? You ain't talking now. What's up?
Why you gonna do this?
What's up, man?
It's not even that serious.
What's up now?
Basketball. What's wrong with you?
What's up now? You gotta say now.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You gotta say now. Now follow me, punk. What's up?
Okay?
Now follow me, punk.
Just leave me alone, all right?
Now follow me, punk.
Just leave me alone.
What's up? Don't touch me again. That's right, I thought so.
Listen, man, I'm sorry, okay?
What? Somebody check him. Don't you move.
South Bend 917, St. Allen, King Center, Washington.
Up, down.
Hey, buddy, talk to me?
So there was an argument?
Yeah.
Real quick?
Hey, pressure 68. Take some nice deep breaths for me.
Do you have the perp in custody?
Affirmative. We've got one confirmed shooting, one suspect, and we're talking to witnesses now.
We got a bullet wound to the chest. We gotta go with this one. What you got? Come on. Tell me what you got here.
We have a gunshot to the chest. No pressure. They do have pulse.
All right, you got a line yet?
Got the
Give me a couple gloves. Wait here. All right, I got some. All right. Hey, buddy, what's your name? Come on, what's your name, son? What's your name?
Mark, as far as you know.
Mark?
I don't have pulses over
All
here.
right. Just shot in the chest. Get me a thoracotomy tray right now.
Okay.
All right.
Biopsy.
His biopsy is 100% on 100% O2.
Okay, good. Pulses
Still
over
got a pulse.
I want a third IV. Stick it down here in the femoral vein. All right. We just got to blow some fluid in. Get me wall tolerant right now. Okay, and get me Plotkin from anesthesia.
Okay.
Okay, what do you got here? Okay. Nice little hole you got here, buddy. Give me the rib spasm. You get 10 units O negative right now.
Your son Mark was shot by a handgun. Unfortunately for him, it missed the heart, shot at an angle. The problem is that in missing the heart, it struck the spinal cord in his spine. In striking the spinal cord, they caused damage to the cord. While he's lucky to be alive, the problem is that he has irreversible damage to the cord, and he'll never walk again. I'm sorry to tell you this now, but you really got to look on the bright side that at least he's alive.
The court finds probable cause that juvenile committed the offense as charged, orders the juvenile waived to adult court for further proceedings. Bond is set in the sum of $50,000 corporate surety or $5,000 cash.
That's my son. My son.
At least your son is walking out of here.
Mine will be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the evidence that we'll hear with respect to this case. Now the attorneys will have an opportunity to make final arguments to you. First, on behalf of the state of Indiana, I'll recognize Mr. Marnoka. Counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Gamage? Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the evidence in this case. Your job is going to be now to decide what that evidence means. There are some things that we know absolutely in this case. One of those things is that the defendant got a gun. One of those things is the defendant took the gun and that he shot the victim. Another one of those things is that but for the doctors and the nurses in the emergency room, the victim would have died. We are here, ladies and gentlemen, to determine what these facts you've heard over the past couple days mean. We are not here to determine legal justification or excuse. Self-defense is not an issue in this case. The age of the defendant is not an issue in this case. And certainly accident is not an issue in this case. You know from the evidence that the gun simply did not go off. What we have to determine here is intent. And intent sometimes can be a difficult thing to prove and a difficult thing for people to determine. And the reason is that we cannot open up a person's head, we cannot unscrew their skull, we cannot attach electrodes or wires or meters to their brain and hook it up to a machine and have a scientist tell us, yes, this is what the intent was. What we have to do is look to what that person did. And the law allows you to do that. The law tells you that you may infer a person's intent based upon their actions, based upon the evidence that was proved in the case. In this case, ladies and gentlemen, the defendant engaged in a course of conscious conduct beginning before he got to the King Center, which led inevitably to the intentional shooting of this victim. What the defendant did is he got a gun. He had that gun in his possession. He decided to take the gun to the King Center. He decided to put the gun in his clothing or in his bag or wherever he concealed it at the King Center. And then the basketball game began. And at some point, as you know in this evidence from this case, there was a fight or a shoving match. And at some point in time, that shoving match involved directly the victim and the defendant. And you know that the defendant got mad, that he left, that he walked off the court. And then when he walked off the court, he went there for a reason. He walked off the court to get the gun. And he went and got the gun, and he brought it back, and he was focused directly at the victim, and he pulled the gun out, and he pointed it, and he warned the victim. He said, "Don't you ever touch me." And you know, the victim made a slow motion towards him, and at that point in time, the defendant pulled the trigger and shot him. And those are the facts. And when you take a look at those facts, ladies and gentlemen, they lead you to one conclusion. They lead you to the conclusion that the defendant did in fact intend to get that gun. He did in fact intend to shoot that gun. And when he did that, he did in fact intend to kill the victim. In Indiana, the intent to kill can be inferred from the deliberate use of a deadly weapon in a manner which is likely to cause death or great bodily injury. And you know that that is just what happened in this case. That in fact, severe and great bodily injury here occurred to that victim. What you need to keep in consideration, what you need to consider, ladies and gentlemen, is the timing and the precise acts here. Had the defendant gone over and got the gun, and just as soon as he got the gun, started shooting randomly, and one of those bullets struck the person, the victim in this case, then you might say, no, There was not an intent to kill. But when the defendant took the conscious step to go and get the gun and come back and confront a person and get close to the person and to point the gun at him and say, "Don't you touch me again," and pull the trigger, it leads to one thing. Ladies and gentlemen, this evidence proves to you beyond a reasonable doubt that on that date, the defendant had the intent to kill and that he acted upon that intent by firing the gun and seriously wounding and paralyzing the victim in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, the state has proven he's guilty, and we ask that you find him guilty. Thank you.
Mr. Gamage, closing argument on behalf of Mr. Martin.
Your Honor, Mr. Minoka. No intent to kill. To prove attempted murder, the state must prove each and every element of this crime beyond a reasonable doubt. I would ask that you look at the facts of this case. Mr. Minoka has given you a version of the facts. I will tell you what we believe the facts to show. However, the ultimate decision is yours. What you should ultimately ask yourself and each other is whether the defendant intentionally shot the victim in this case. And you must determine that without hesitation. How do we determine this? You have to look at the facts. The facts are these, many of them undisputed. When Michael left home, yes, he had a gun. He put the gun in his bag, not because he intended to kill anyone. He took it for protection. Michael went to the King Center to play basketball. He was playing basketball. The adrenaline was flowing. He was excited. And an argument ensued. An argument ensued between Michael and Mark Baker. The argument led to a shoving match. More adrenaline was flowing. Michael was excited. At one point, he went to his bag and got his gun. And he turned and shot, fired 2, 3, 4 times and said, "Die." No, that's not what he did. He picked up the gun and he said, "Don't touch me." He said that because he was scared. That's also why he got the gun. He did not want to be hurt. He didn't pick up the gun and immediately fire. He stood there with it. And the victim took steps toward him. He was scared. And yes, he fired the gun. But intent to kill? No. Unfortunately, tragically, Mark was paralyzed. But nothing that any of us can do in this courtroom can change that. I ask you to hold the state to its burden of proof, beyond a reasonable doubt, without the slightest hesitation, in a matter of the highest regard to you. I will submit to you, the facts show the defendant, Michael, did not intentionally fire the gun. That he was scared, and the gun went off. And yes, he pulled the trigger. Badly. Knowingly touching another person in a rude manner while using a deadly weapon. That's what happened. Badly. Thank you.
Mr. Minoka, does the state wish rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Gamage. Ladies and gentlemen, in order for the defendant's argument to work, you must forget one thing. And the thing that you must forget is that every action the defendant took with this gun was directed solely at one person, and was directed at that person for a reason, namely that there had been this shoving contest. The gun was taken, the gun was aimed, and the gun was fired. It was directed at the victim, and the defendant accomplished exactly what he wanted to do. I will leave you, ladies and gentlemen, with one thought, and that thought is this. If the doctors had not succeeded in saving the victim's life, Would it be difficult for you to find the defendant guilty of murder? The answer is no. What I ask you here, ladies and gentlemen, is to not find him guilty of something that isn't appropriate, simply because he was fortunate enough to live. Find him guilty of what he is guilty with, and that is attempted murder. Thank you.
Members of the jury, I'll now give you the law which applies to the facts in this case and the forms of verdict. You'll then be allowed to retire into the jury room to begin your deliberations.